So we've been exploring masculine and feminine energy, and this is the last class of this series. And what we need to do is bring it home. What we did was, in the first class, we looked at the idea of masculine and feminine coming from a singular source. Now, that singular source has very little to do with us, because that singular source is prior to existence. So anything that is prior to existence really has nothing to do with us at all. If I had to use a metaphor from physics, the Big Bang. So the Big Bang sets off a process of evolution that's been going on for billions of years. And it begins with that beginning point. We don't go, in physics, they don't go prior to that. What was prior has nothing to do with what happens subsequently. It's a funny analogy for me to be using as a creationist, but it's a good analogy, so I like it. But the idea of masculine and feminine has existed since the beginning of the idea of manifestation. So 2 weeks ago, we explored the different manifestations of the masculine and feminine. So 3 weeks ago, we looked at the very original masculine and feminine. We looked at Adam and Eve. We looked at Adam and Eve being created as a singular entity, and then they were split. On the same day that it was created, it was split into two components, and then masculine and feminine would become separate. This tells a narrative of the origins of everything. Were originally unified, and then they came to a point of being split. So in the unified state, there was everything, and then there was the beginning of something new. The everything is non-divisible. Everything as it existed in the beginning, when we talk about in the beginning, prior to in the beginning of Genesis, just the beginning point of measurement, there is nothing. It's consistent. It is constant. It doesn't change. There is no delineation between particles. It's all one. And that one is massive and that one is tiny, because it's not massive because there is nothing there, but it's not tiny because it's not small as opposed to big. So it just is, and that's what we refer to as God. That's what we refer to as the Ein Sof, as the infinite. Once the infinite starts allowing for finite components of itself to exist and exist as an entity, they exist within the infinite. However, they are now not infinite as opposed to infinite. That is where we start getting difference between components. That's where we start talking about the 10 Sefirot. And we've got in the 10 Sefirot 10 different energies which make up everything. What we then looked at 2 weeks ago was which of the Sefirot are masculine and which of the Sefirot are feminine. And what we did was we looked in the realm of Tikkun, when the Sefirot are laid out in 3 separate columns. We have a masculine column, we have a feminine column, and we have a unified column. We haven't explored the middle column. When we explore the 3 columns, top and bottom, the top is masculine and the bottom is feminine. When we look at the middle is masculine and Malchut is the feminine. So masculine and feminine are relative to each other, but they are also in themselves not relative at all. When we are talking about top and bottom, so there we've got a masculine and feminine. The feminine is very much feminine, the masculine is very much masculine. When we're talking about the right and the right is very much masculine and the left is very much feminine. But it is possible that if it's on the left but it's sitting on the top, it's going to be masculine, and that if it's on the right but it's sitting on the bottom, it's going to be feminine. It just depends what the context we're speaking about. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight in context of people. So then last week, we started looking at how the Torah looks at masculine and feminine, the mother and the father, figureheads, as being things that need to be honored, and realize that they are different to each other. And we used the law of honoring your father and your mother. We looked at the laws of Shabbat, to honor the Shabbat and to remember the Shabbat. One is active, one is passive. And so again, we've got these different we're able to categorize things as masculine and feminine. What we haven't done is we haven't looked at males or females, people. We have just looked at masculine and feminine qualities. Now, masculine and feminine qualities can be found through nature, and I don't mean that you have male animals and female animals. I'm talking about water and earth, nurturer and growth. We will find in Kabbalah everything in the world is going to be placed into a masculine or feminine camp. What we said in the first class is that man and woman were created from a single thing that was then divided into two components. But where the course of the universe is going is to reunify that. But not to reunify that so that we become fused, but reunify it so that masculine and feminine are completely balancing one another to a point that they are sexually attracted to one another. Meaning moving into a place of where they will create something new. That's the masculine and feminine coming together, creates the malchus, creates the ben, creates the child, creates the next component, which is not a part of them. So we're not there yet. While we do mimic that, we create children, we bring children into this world, we have not reached a point of where the world is absolutely balanced. We have not reached a point of where there is this absolute harmony of people, of nature, and definitely not a harmony amongst men and women, as I pointed out in the first class. In the first class, I spoke about the changes that took place as a result of the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution leads to a very unhealthy shift in society, and it really is not the unhealthy shift as much as it is a reflection of an unhealthy state of affairs that had already been in place. What happened with the Industrial Revolution? Work slowly becomes easier and easier. The Industrial Revolution gives rise to technological development, and technological development as we have it today leads to the fact that no people really work hard except labourers. But labourers do not make up a large sector of the workforce. So when it comes to labour, he or she who is strongest is going to get the work. He or she who is strongest is going to make a good bricklayer. If you're a weak guy, you're going to be a lousy bricklayer. You're only going to be able to stack X number of bricks in a day. If you're a strong woman, you're going to get the job because it's about laying bricks. But when it comes to accounting, when it comes to law, when it comes to these things, when it comes to even manufacturing, what does it make a difference if you're a man or a woman today? It doesn't really. It doesn't really make a difference. There's not much that a man brings to the table that a woman can't bring to a table. Once upon a time where much work was physical, there was a natural tendency of the man to do the physical work, hence he became the breadwinner, and the woman, who was a natural nurturer, more often than not, would be at home nurturing, cooking, looking after the kids. Now, because that's what it was, does not mean that's what anyone intentionally did. So we have a natural division because it's a natural division. It's not a consciousness. If we want to look at consciousness, I can only bring you a couple moments of consciousness of where we see an interesting form of consciousness in the Torah. Number one, the Medrash says, when God told Adam, remember in the story of Gan Eden, there's the tree of knowledge, the Eitz Hadas, and God says to Adam, don't eat the fruit from that tree. You can eat from everything. I've placed all the trees in the world. You can eat from any of them. You cannot eat from this one tree. And what happens is the snake gets Eve to touch the fruit, then eat the fruit, and then Eve gets Adam to eat the fruit. Now, there's one important factor here. Yeah, Eve did the naughty work. But Eve was never told not to. Adam was told not to. Adam told Eve, please don't. God's told me something. The Medrash says if God really didn't want if God really didn't want the fruit to be eaten, he should have told Eve not to. Because had he told Eve, it never would have happened. Because a woman would have honored that request. That's number one. The Medrash learns this from a very interesting story that happens much, much later. When the Jews received the Torah in the desert, they gathered at Har Sinai, they gathered at Mount Sinai, and they gathered at Mount Sinai, and after the whole thing, God says to Moshe, Kosomer Beis Yaakov, so you should say to the house of Jacob. You say, okay, fine, go tell the children of Israel the narrative that you have just received on the mountain. But if you look at the term Beis Yaakov, that's not the normal term given to the Jewish people. The normal term is the Bnei Yisrael, not Beis Yaakov. Beis Yaakov is a reference to the women of the Jewish people. So where is the first place that Moses goes from the mountain? He goes to the women, and he teaches them the Torah. And from there, he then goes to the men to teach them the Torah. So if you want to know in context of Jewish history, who were the first group of people to actually receive all the laws, it was first the women, and then it was the men. And there are many, many different reasons given for that. But one of the reasons is based on this original idea that had God not wanted Adam and Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge, he should have given Eve the instruction, because the women would honor and implement it. And therefore, Moshe goes to the women first, because that is the way for Jewish continuity, that is the way for the message to be transferred from one generation to the next, is by having it in the hands of the women. So what we see is that women get things done in context of this spiritual narrative. But it also shows that there's another commentary, and this comes up in the Talmudic period. Why give it to the women? Because the women will accept it. The women will accept it. The men are going to doubt it. Men are natural skeptics. They're going to question it, and they're going to be hopeless teachers. They're not going to be able to take this wisdom on. So give it to the women because they will accept it. And then there's another commentary which says because the women were the nurturers, the women look after the children, we want the women to educate the children, the men aren't going to educate because they're never around. So these are all different interesting statements, and they almost play into stereotypes of the role of the man and the role of the woman throughout much of history. However, that stereotype has, in my opinion, been a reality for much of history, in that it's expected that a woman is a nurturer, that she will look after the children, she will cook, and it is expected that the man will work. Why? Because society deems that to be the role. Not because the woman put her hand up, and not because the man put his hand up. It's because that's what society, which by and large has been run by men, has dictated needs to happen. And that's what I'm saying, that it is not because of a conscious decision to do this, but rather it is because of a natural evolution of society that it has been like that. As a result, we still live in a world today of where, in many industries, I struggle with this idea because I don't see it. I don't see it as much. I don't understand this idea. If you've got a man or a woman, that you're going to hire a man first, because it doesn't make sense to me. But apparently, and this is apparently the fact, is that men have better chances of getting a job if they're up against a woman in most industries. So that's the reality. The question is why? You can't say because women are going to have babies, because we're not always talking about married women. We're talking about women who aren't there. And I know that nowadays you can't even talk like that because it's discriminatory, but I just want to cut to what is the real reason behind it. I'm not sure if there is a legitimate reason as much as there is a legitimate tendency. There's a tendency that you just hire men to do the work and the women shouldn't. However, if we look at the makeup of the 10 Sefirot in context of a man and in context of a woman, there really isn't much of a difference between a man or a woman. And therefore, most jobs in the workplace can be done by either or. But we do notice trends that exist amongst men and trends that exist amongst women. And perhaps if companies and societies and communities realize this, they would want to be looking at pools of men for certain jobs, and they'd actually want more women to be involved. Because if we look at the right-hand side of our 10 Sefirot, we've got Chesed, we've got Chachma, Chesed, and Netzach. Chachma is the ability to think big. Now, that doesn't mean a woman can't think big. And it doesn't mean that if you've got a man or a woman, the man is always going to come up with the next big idea. It's just that when men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Who's read the book? Okay. there's a lot of stereotyping in there, but there's some interesting ideas that are presented in there. So you've got the story of the husband that comes home and his wife is crying on the couch and she's all upset, and he says, "Oh, what's wrong, dear? What's bothering you?" And she says, "Oh, so-and-so did such and such to me and I'm so upset about it." He goes, "That's it. I'm going to go sort this person out." And she just breaks down crying. And he's like, "What's wrong? I'm going to sort this out. We're going to fix this once and for all." She goes, "Oh, you never ever listen to me." It's like, "What am I not hearing? You've told me the problem. I'm going to solve this for you." And she storms off in a huff. "You're like all the other men. You never listen to me." He's like wondering, what have I done wrong? Ribono Shalom, like I not only have I heard, I'm going to fix it. And so the contention of the book is that at no point was the woman looking for her problem to be solved. She was just looking to share. She was just looking to share. She has something that she's going through. She wants to share it with someone. The man doesn't want to hear. He wants to fix it. Why is that? So the Chochmah Chesed Netzach is a very... before we get there, in the creation of a child, the man provides the seminal drop. The woman provides pregnancy, the egg and pregnancy, the nurturing, the maturation, the development of a human being. It all takes place within the feminine. The masculine doesn't do any of that. The masculine gives a drop. It's the ultimate little bit. Doesn't do anything though. Can't make it. Can collect all the sperm you want. No children are coming out of that. If eggs aren't being fertilized and aren't being carried, and as has been the case for all of time, isn't carried in a womb, you're not going to end up with a child. That is all the feminine component. The man does his little bit and is done. There is a tendency for the masculine to want to return back to the seminal drop, to go back to what it was in the original intention, to make things like they always were meant to be, not based on what they are, but based on what they're meant to be. When you have that seminal drop, it's meant to be a healthy child. It's meant to be perfect. At that point, a couple don't engage in sex and then go, if it's not a healthy child, you don't talk like that. It's going to be a healthy child. It's going to be a healthy child. We're not going to think about anything else. We think positive and we want that. The man is permanently in that state of wanting it to be in the perfect state, in that original state. Hence, men, according to this, would be tinkerers, fixers. Something's broken. We can't allow it to be broken. I have this need for it to go back to normal. Now, I'm not a tinkerer, by the way. I'm one of the most lousy handymen you'll ever find. And yet, there seems to be this idea that men are tinkerers, that the real man is a tinkerer. The real man has lots of tools. I've got a couple tools, I can't find them. So what does that make me? It makes me a feminine masculine. That's what it makes me. If you have a woman that... What? I've got one left hand and I haven't got another hand. My other hand's just a rejection hand. This thing is only so that when I walk, I don't topple or walk in circles. I can sway. I'm a feminine masculine. When you have a woman who is a tinkerer by nature, loves tinkering and fixing, that's a masculine feminine. So it's not that it's a man's job or it's a woman's job. It's understanding what side of me is taking place here. The masculine is wanting, the chesed is very much about the ultimate picture, the big picture, solving it so that it all goes back to normal so that we can go back to being happy. Gvura is able to sit, the left-hand side is able to sit. It's able to sit on it, accept it. Hod accepts. Hod accepts this current and works with the current. Netzach destroys the current in order to go back to what it needs to be. Hod is, this is what we have at our disposal, this is what we're going to work with. So the feminine is an accepting of the present reality and will work with that. you will find that women tend towards this, and you will find men tend towards that, but that doesn't mean that there aren't large exceptions to the rule. You can have women who tend to be more masculine, and you can have men that tend to be more feminine. But you will find that the vast majority go this way, and the vast majority go that way. Even when you get a feminine masculine, you'll still find that they are more masculine than that they are more masculine than a woman is. If you had to compare the two, generally. So, what does that mean? That means that you can't say this is a man's job or this is a woman's job, but rather you can say this is a masculine role, this is a feminine role. In which case you could have a woman who is better suited for this masculine role, and you could have a man who's better suited for this feminine role, depending on their own disposition, depending on who they are as a character. But as a result of the natural evolution of our people, humanity, we have said it's a man or a woman, instead of saying it's a masculine or a feminine, what am I? So, listening. Listening is a feminine quality. Can men listen? 100% men can listen. Do men listen? Some do. Some don't. Do women listen? Some do. Some don't. So it's not a quality that you can say belongs to a sex, as much as you will find it more common as a predisposition based on the Sefirot alignment in the individual. Here, tzedakah, charity. Tzedakah is a feminine term. Tzedakah, charity, is... What is nurturing? When we talk about that motherly role, what is a mother as opposed to the father? When we stereotype. The father is, come on boy, go and kick the ball, get out there and tie a knot, go and climb a tree, go and excel in school. Mothers don't not want their child to excel, but you will find that many mothers will accept what their child is and push them based on what they accept. Men will push their child based on what they expect. Expectations versus accepting. The nurturer is a person that accepts what the person is and will try to move them, grow them, develop them based on what is. The expector is not one that takes into account what is right now, but takes into account what would be, could be, should be, and will push. Which way is the correct way? They're both correct. They're both correct. Because if you don't have expectations, then you don't strive. If you don't have acceptance, you're going to destroy. So what we actually need is the harmony between the two. Hence the world cannot exist if it was just women, and could not exist if it was just men. We need both the men and the women because we counterbalance each other and bring absolute balance. Now, right now, we live in a world, and I see it very much, we live in a world in which everyone is trying to wrestle for the control. We've got this a rise of we've got the rise of men. Men know how to do it better. Then we've got a rise of women of no men. You've stuffed it up. Give it to the women to do. They're both wrong. Give it to two people, one male, one female, to work through each other's differences and complement each other, because that's where you're going to find the middle column. The middle column is harmony. Harmony is made up of two opposites that balance each other perfectly. What is harmony? Harmony is not control. Harmony is not that you have been influenced. If you've been influenced, you're not in a harmonious situation. Harmony is where dual existence can take place and it doesn't destroy each other. It's not just coexistence. Coexistence is what everyone wants in the Middle East. Arabs and Palestinians and Jews to just not kill each other. That's coexistence. We don't want that. That's the dumbest thing we could ask for as a society. I'm being very masculine right now. That's the dumbest thing. What we want is that they live in the same cities, they work in the same factories, and they bring each other hot dishes when someone has a baby. That's better than coexistence. That's peace. Because what's peace? Oseh shalom bimromav. We say this in our prayers every single day. Oseh shalom bimromav. God is the one that makes peace. What is peace? Peace is where you take two opposites, you force them to live together, and they start complementing each other to make a new entity. Shalom. Wholeness. Whole is not where a whole lot of pieces are stuffed together. Whole is that the pieces all accept each other. Now they've made a new unit. Once they make a new unit, you don't recognize any of them. Not because the red has made all the blue pieces red, or because the blue has made all the red pieces blue, but because the red and the blue have made purple. What's purple? Purple is both red and blue, but it is neither red nor blue. It requires both, and with that you get this beautiful color, purple. So harmony is not coexistence, it's peace. It's working towards a new product by complete investment. Therefore we need both the masculine from the right and the feminine from the left. When we talk about the child, Abba and Ima, Chochmah and Bina, Chesed and Gvura, the mothers and the fathers of the things that will, what's Chochmah? The brainwave, that incredible intellectual, incredible moment of new discovery, followed by Bina, which is developmental thinking, working with what is, nothing new. Let's work it out. Let's split this apart. Let's get all our components here. Let's analyze what is. What do you do? What do you get when you get both of those? You know you've done something right if you end up with Das. Das is the child. The child is the product of the big thinking and the analytical thinking. What do I now have? Transference of my idea. Let's say I have an idea. I'm going to invent sticky tape. So I've got this idea. It's going to stick things together. It's going to be amazing. What is it? I can't tell you. I don't know. Bina is going to say, what is it? It's sticky. It's on a roll. It's plastic, so it's really durable and it lasts. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. And then Das is, let me tell you what it is. It's a brown roll of plastic that's sticky on one side and shiny on the other. Why is it shiny? Because it stops it from sticking to itself. And what does the sticky part do? It connects things together. What are you going to call it? Sticky tape. Have I told you the science of it all? No. I haven't given you the chokhmah behind it. Have I told you all the steps of how I came up with it? No. I haven't given you the bina. But I've given you the content. That's the child. When you look at the child, do you know the complexity of the father or the mother? No. Do you know how old the parents are? No. Do you know how wise the parents are? No. But I've got enough that I know that there's a male and a female. I know enough that they must be of reproductive age. I've got a child. Das is not everything, but it is the first moment of transference. It is the balance of both male and female. Once they work together, they can produce. If you end up with dominance, you're not going to get there. You don't create child. I mean, we do. Practically, we do. Rape is dominance. You can create a child in rape, but let's not talk about that, because we don't want that to be the reality. If we end up with that, we've got a very imbalanced society. We've got a society that is all off. If we bring children into this world via rape, what we want is love. What we want is shalom. We want peace. We want that a male and a female court one another, and that they come to a point of unification in a state of love, in a state of acceptance, in a state of aspiration, in a state of where it's a union of two opposites, and each one saying, I just am not happy. I'm not happy without you, and I'm happy because you're happy. That sort of ego abnegation. So the male and the female components are required, and they are required to be different. We don't want women to be men, and we don't want men to be women. So what do? How do we change things? Let's stop talking about things being male jobs or female jobs and start talking about things as being masculine or feminine. Who would be a better person in a home to be a breadwinner, a man or a woman? I'm asking you. Who would make a better stay-at-home parent, a man or a woman? It depends on the makeup of the person. There are stay-at-home dads that would do a much better job than the mother. And there are stay-at-home mums that do a much better job than the father. There are breadwinner men who do a much better job than the mother. There are breadwinning women that do a much better job than the men. It's got nothing to do with who is the man. You're the man, go to work. You're the woman, stay home. It's for each couple to recognize within our relationship who is the masculine and who is the feminine. It's not for anyone to say, You've got the hair, you've got the beard, that's it. Our sex will tell us a lot about us, but it doesn't mean that it tells us everything. And it also doesn't tell us anything because it's only relative to the other person who's in the relationship. Yeah, compared to many other men, I'm a softie. I'm very feminine. Compared to many others, I'm very masculine. My wife, compared to Rachel, compared to many women, is very tough and aspirational. Compared to many other women, she's very much the nurturer. So if she would marry another man, it would be very obvious. If I would marry another woman, it'd be very obvious. But the fact is, it's not like that. We married each other, which means we have to work it out within our own relationship. Who is the masculine and who is the feminine? And then the masculine should go and work as a masculine, and the feminine should go and work as the feminine. Today I did a funeral, where the woman is the breadwinner, and goes out to work 7 days a week, works like a dog, and the man cooks and he raises the children, and it's all good. It's a wonderful thing. They came to that realization. They used to both work, and they had a child, and they had to work out who's not. And he said, I think you're doing a better job going out and working. You enjoy it. You love it. You're flying through the ranks in your company. So what? I'm going to say, sorry, sweetheart, you had the baby. I'm meant to go work. So he gave up his job, and he stayed home. I thought it was an amazing story. Anyone that says that this is a ridiculous reality, not at all. This is a perfect reality. It works. It's exceptional in that it's not the common. But what's the common defining? The common is not the common because everyone else has made a conscious decision and all the men and all the women have made conscious decisions. The common is what the common is because that's what society has just evolved into. And what we want to do is go back to making conscious decisions. And that's why Hashem says to Moshe, go and give it to the women. Go and give the Torah to the women. Because women predominantly are better nurturers than men when it comes to the giving over of the information. Because even if they're masculine in nature, they will still do a better job because they carry innate feminine qualities, just as men carry innate masculine qualities. And so we talk in generalities, but we need to also live with the exception, in the specific. So this middle column, if we get the middle column right, then ideals are given over in Das. Tiferes leads to a balance of emotions, and Yesod allows for connection, and Malchus allows for something new. These are the middle columns. What we need is that the masculine and feminine are aligned. The masculine and feminine within us, which is our Chabad and our Chagas Nahi, which is our mind and emotion, and also our right and our left side. So I've been talking a lot about the right and left. Now let's look at the mind and emotion. Emotion is feminine, mind is masculine. When we say mind, we don't mean intelligence. When we say mind, it's being mental about things, as opposed to feeling about things. So just think about it for a moment. Are you a thinker or are you a feeler? So very often thinkers and feelers speak differently. Feelers say, I feel that's not right. Thinkers say, I think that's not right. So have you ever sat in a meeting and you're like, I feel, and it's just a turn of phrase, but it's because you're a feeler. Many men are feelers. Very few people are thinkers. Most people are feelers. We all tend to be more feminine when it comes to this. To be a thinker is a very, very accomplished way of being, that you always go into the intellectual side of something and work something through before you emotionally respond. You'll say, what are you talking about, Menachem? Everyone thinks. We think, but we think with our heart. We don't think with our mind. Thinking with the mind is very detached. There's no emotional process. There's no connection with it. It's about the analysis. There's a problem. I'm going to have a chokhmah. I'm going to solve it. Problem solved. There's a problem. I'm going to bin it. I'm going to analyze it. Problem solved. There's none of this like, oh, I feel this is an important cause. Or Gvura of, I don't feel this is an important cause. I'm not getting closer. There's none of that. It's just mathematics. Very few people are mathematical. And it'll be very, very hard to live with such a person. I've met such people. And they are very hard people to... there's a couple who I know. He is very, 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 very intellectual about everything. And he struggles to express emotions. And as a result, their relationship really suffers because she is looking for emotion and he can't give it because everything's a problem to be solved. It's not just to fix. It's like, oh, she's crying. Right, I guess it's almost robotic. I need to put my arms around. I think I felt tear. Right, that's my response. It's not that he's connecting through emotion. It's that he's saying that's what the book says. That's what I'm going to do. And it's a very, very hard person. On the other hand, he's an incredible problem solver, incredible thinker. Is one of the leaders in his company because of it. So there are pros and cons. We all have our Chabad, we all have our Mochin, we all have our intellectual process, we all have our emotions. We tend to be more emotional. We tend to be more impulsive. What we need to all do is tap into our masculine. Now, the more classic masculines will naturally be there. And what they may struggle with is actually bringing more emotion into it. So let's talk about men for a moment. Men will have a stronger Chabad, they'll have a stronger intellectual process than their emotions. But why is that? It's because they're afraid to go to their emotions, because they can retreat into their intellectual. Women aren't afraid to go into their emotional. So it's about where they both go in opposite directions. Men will be intellectual and will struggle to go into emotion, and then the woman will struggle will be in emotion and struggle to go into intellectual. I want to feel right now, I don't want to solve it. I want to solve it right now, I don't want to feel it. Who's better and who's worse? Who's right, who's wrong? Both are right and both are wrong. There's a time to think and there's a time to feel. So again, we've got to try to work out in ourselves what is the more dominant. We will tend to find that there is a common starting point amongst women and a common starting point amongst men, but both of them are handicapped.
Sorry, just when you say women and men, do you sort of mean feminine and masculine, or you actually mean women and men?
No, I now mean women and men, classically speaking. Like I said, of course there are going to be massive exceptions to the rule, but the exception won't be larger than the rule. But you will find that. Then if I want to be absolutely clinical, you'll find the feminine will always start in emotion and want to stay in the emotional state and not go into the intellectual state. And the masculine will always want to be in the intellectual state and want to come into the feminine. When we now look at, I'm going back to the men are from Mars, women are from Venus sort of classification of men and women, you'll find that women tend to start more in the emotional space and the men tend to start in the more intellectual space. And each one fears for different reasons to go into the other. The man has issues, men have issues with emotions. Now I'm saying what's nature, nurture, I don't know, but we have issues with emotions. We do. We're scared to express them, we're scared to be soft, and certain cultures don't make it any better. We live in Australia, we've got a very blokey culture still, and blokes don't cry. Blokes don't get emotional. And as a result, we stifle it. So and that's not a good thing, because as a result, there's a whole component of ourselves that's not allowed out. And that leads to an inner tension and an inner frustration. So we need to allow ourselves to open up to that. What that means is, it could mean many things. It could mean that when we're listening to someone, we just listen, we don't help them unless they ask us for help. Or it can mean that when we're feeling something, that we don't overthink it. The other way is for the more emotional type, more impulsive type, is that they've got to work harder to take 3 seconds to pause and think it through. They've got to consider, have I been stuck in this dwelling place of what my situation is, and is it time to move on? Is it time to climb out? Is it time to respond? Is it time to seek help? And people that prefer that emotional place don't want to do that. They don't want to move out of it because there's a certain comfort there. So we've got to be able to identify this within ourselves. We might be able to carve this down, men and women, but I would prefer to carve it down masculine and feminine and let everyone work out for themselves where they are. I happen to see trends, but that's what I happen to see. Maybe it's the glasses I'm wearing. I happen to see that a lot of women will behave in one way, a lot of men will behave in another way. But there are plenty of exceptions. What do we conclude tonight? What we conclude is that we have to analyze ourselves for, are we more masculine, are we more feminine? And we need to make sure we're compensating for it and utilizing our strengths in the right way. Then what we need to do is look at it in context of our partner and say, right, who is which? Who is which in this little olam? Who is which in this little world, in this little cosmos? Because when we do that, we go back to the very beginning of where Adam and Eve come back together. Where Adam and Eve go back to being a single entity, completely in tune with each other and completely supportive of each other, and not each one just trying to dominate the other. Now let's go back to the first class of this series. We now get the name of Hashem. We start off with the name of God, Havaya, Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. We've got Yud, masculine, Hey, feminine, Vav, masculine, Hey, feminine. What we see is that the balance of God is actually both masculine and feminine. And what we need is to ensure that our masculine side comes first and our feminine side comes second. This has nothing to do with who walks through a door first, has nothing to do with who gets a job first. What it means is that if we want to be in absolute balance, then what we need in ourselves is to be first practicing our masculine and then following up with our feminine. Think, then feel. Analyze, then express. When we do this, we create an order, a tikkun, within ourselves. It's not first and second in context of priority, who is more important or who is less important. It's first and second in context of 1 and 2. Before you have 2, you've got 1. After 1 comes 2. Neither of them is more important than the other. There's just a flow of how you get from one to the next. After A comes B. B is not second to A. B is the follow-up of A. First you have sperm, then you have egg, then you have child. What we need to do is honor this by making sure it does not become a justification for better or worse, for superior or inferior, which is what religion does do. I will hand that to everyone here. Not religion, what religious practitioners do. Because we live in a world of where the masculine should come before the feminine, because that's it, then the people who decided that they embody the masculine said, well, we come first. And the feminine, the woman, comes second. What we need to go back to is, no. The masculine provides impetus, and the feminine provides nurturing. We must be working together. And until we do that, we will keep seeing a complete imbalance in the universe, because Shem Havaya won't be balanced. We'll have Heys and Yuds and Vovs and Hey. It'll be completely out of order, and it will be complete Hey or complete Yud. It will be complete dominance. What we want, the other example that I used, is the plug and the socket. Which one is doing the powering up of the appliance, the plug or the socket? Neither. The plug and the socket are a perfect fit. One has to be inserted into the other, granted, but that's because one shouldn't move. One is the royal, come to the royal. The one is the source, come to the source. The other one is the thing that makes it work. So the source has to flow into it. So what we've got is this beautiful overlapping of the masculine and feminine. What questions do we have?
You just said Hashem, Yud Hey, Vav Hey, is masculine and feminine.
Yes.
So why do we refer to
God as a He? Very good. Very good. We touched on that question in the first class. So why is God a He? Because God is a provider. God provides, the world receives. So we are feminine in the relationship between God and people, God is the masculine, and the people are the feminine. We spoke about that also 3 weeks ago in Nukvin and Duchrin, in the masculine and feminine sides of the Sefirot. The first thing that provides is masculine. The thing that receives is feminine. So God is always a he, but not always. When God is Shekhinah, it's she. When God is Shekhinah, Shekhinah is the feminine side of God. So the Shekhinah is in the Mishkan, in the temple. There was the presence of God. What's the Hebrew word? The Shekhinah. Not the presence of Adonai, it was the presence of Shekhinah. Shekhinah is when it has come to settle. When the infinite is in the finite and is at home and is comfortable and is able to accept what is, then God becomes feminine. Who becomes masculine? The people. We bring God into the world. God becomes the feminine. How did God come here? Because we provided. We put the work in. We put in the seminal drop that allowed for God to receive it. So God, whenever we talk about God, bless us, it's because God is the provider and we are the receiver. God is the Oyer and we are the Keli. The light coming into the vessel. We can't do it. But what we can do is we can create a situation where God wants to, by creating the container. We say we are open, we are available. You're not allowed to, some people don't know, you're not allowed to, a woman is not allowed to be betrothed against her will. People don't know this. We know that. Shidduchim, organized marriages, has always been a part of the culture in Judaism. What people don't realize is that a woman is not allowed to be married off against her will. So people can do a shidduch, say, I think so-and-so and so-and-so should get married. Good. But if you don't have the woman's permission, you're not allowed to do it. It's a punishable crime. Just by the way. The woman has to say, I am open, before the man can come to the woman. If the woman says, I'm not open, then there is nothing to give to, in which case the man is not a man. The provider is only a provider if there's something that's willing to receive. If there's nothing to receive, you're not a provider, you're a flooder. You're a destroyer. Well, I'm giving energy, but you've got a brick wall. There's no power sockets here. No one wants your energy. No, I'm giving energy. I'm a male. No, you're not. You're a destroyer. So a woman has to say, I am open. At a chuppah, what happens? A man says harayat. At a chuppah, a man proposes. He gives a ring. But what does the woman have to do? She has to extend her finger. If she doesn't extend her finger, the man is just waving a ring through the air. There is no marriage if the woman doesn't receive. It's not about his proposition. It's about her triggering the proposition process, which is why you've got feminine, that's the lower. Then you've got masculine. What sits above the masculine? Another feminine. So in the hierarchy of spirituality, there are two feminines and one masculine. There's the highest feminine, because that is what triggers the masculine process, that there was a feminine. But the upper feminine is controlled by the lower feminine. So we've got the man giving and the woman receiving, but the woman receiving is only because she gave permission for the man to give. So, or the feminine and masculine. So why is Hashem a he? Because Hashem is the provider, of which we are the receiver. When Hashem is not providing, Hashem is not a he.
It's probably less so a he and more of a masculine.
Correct. And he is a masculine term. And that's where we always get ourselves in pickles. And that's why it's so much nicer to daven in Hebrew than in English. Because in Hebrew it's not he. It's oi. It's a suffix. The suffix doesn't tell us it's a man, it tells us it's a masculine term. It's the problem with language when it's translated. We get more often the suffix than he in Hebrew. In English it's always he, because there is no we don't have masculine and feminine terms in English. So it gets lost in translation. We are a lost in translation world, so the Lord is a male. B'tselem Elokim, we were created in the image of man. Adam, not man. Adam, human. Not man. Mankind, not man. But we love a good masculine God, because what does that mean? Men are the best. I'm here to correct that.
What about, does the same apply for Mashiach? Is
Is Mashiach a man?
Is that a masculine?
I think Mashiach is a masculine, but I can't be sure. I'm quite sure Mashiach is a masculine as a character, because Mashiach would be a masculine. The role of Mashiach is a provider, yeah. So I think Mashiach is a masculine.
Wouldn't that mean just a couple then?
Would
With the concept of Mashiach?
be a couple?
Yeah, wouldn't it be a couple?
No, the era of Mashiach will be a couple. Very good. The era of Mashiach is a coupling of the masculine and feminine. Mashiach is just a character, much like a husband is just a character. Well, Mashiach will be a masculine. Based on how it's always been taught, I'm just going through Rambam, Maimonides in my head, Mashiach is a masculine character, it's a male. The reason why I say Mashiach the era and not Mashiach the person, why Mashiach is a couple, is because Mashiach is not perfection. Mashiach has to achieve something. If Mashiach doesn't achieve it, it's not Mashiach. Mashiach is the time of the Messianic era of balance, but there is someone who has to initiate it. Mashiach is the initiator. That's why I'm saying as a masculine. And that's probably why they learnt it as a man. Mashiach is an initiator. The people's response will create the era of Mashiach, of which is a balance of masculine and feminine. What else do we have?
One of the things you said probably about 10, 15 minutes ago now was that for anyone to have to present the masculine first,
Yeah.
and the feminine second, and then a few minutes later you went on to talk about to think and then to feel.
Yeah.
Was that the basis, the basic of what a woman needs to be doing? Or, I'm assuming.
Okay. So I was talking more in context of what every individual needs to be doing, in that we need to get our masculine and feminine energies in order. So I'll give you an example. So I did a funeral today. For the next week, the family are going to be grieving. They're going to be sad. That's an emotion. Good. They don't have to think about that. In 3 months from now, they're still going to be sad. If they are sad like the day that their father died, they need to be able to have an awareness of, is this appropriate or not, that I'm still so debilitated that I'm not coming out of this stage. It is a masculine ability to develop that awareness. It is a masculine side of self to say, I am aware of my sadness. I'm going to now, I can't stop the sadness. We're not robots. But I'm going to take myself to a grief counselor to get a grip of what's going on. That decision is not an emotional decision. It's an intelligent decision. That's where we need to get, if we say, no, I'm allowed to have my emotions, I'm an emotional being, you got to let me grieve. That's the emotions doing all the talking, and it will justify, I'm an emotional being, I'm now going to present you with a legal case of why I'm allowed to be an emotional being, instead of being a masculine of saying, I'm aware of it and I'm now going to make a decision. I can't control my feelings, but I can control my responses. We have to move into that masculine zone of ourselves. Then we go to our grief counselor, and the grief counselor says, oh, by the way, if you're still crying 3 months later, that's perfectly okay. So now you've gone through that, your mind says it's okay to be sad. You permit yourself, not just permit yourself, you actually promote the emotional response. If the counselor says, no, it's not okay, so you now say, well, what am I going to do about it? The counselor says, I'm going to give you some exercises, some mindfulness techniques. Let's go exploring into your deep past. Let's start doing some psychotherapy, who knows what. Let's go there. Let's develop the masculine side of you so that we can bring the feminine side into balance with what it should be.
And that's the same that we're talking about a female.
Correct. So a woman also needs to go into that masculine side of herself. Correct. What I would dare to generalize and stereotype is that the man is going to go to the grief counselor for a different reason. The man is going to go to the grief counselor because he didn't cry at his father's funeral. The woman is going to go because she's still crying. Each one has an issue here. If they're perfectly balanced, they will both cry, be able to emerge, and move on at the right pace. Move on is a very strong word. And be able to balance their new reality of life without their loved one. But each one is going to suffer from a natural challenge. And the masculine's challenge is, I don't want to cry. And the feminine's challenge is, I don't want to stop crying. Both of them. And you will tend to find, most people are balanced when it comes to this, but you will tend to find that some are more here in amongst men and some women are more there. But you'll also find the opposite. You'll find the opposite.
I would have said, Menachem, that, and this is not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, that the woman tends to be more self-aware or more emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
In the sense of her feelings.
Yeah.
Is more likely to go and seek help as a matter of course.
Yes.
Whereas a man is more likely to see seeking help as there's something wrong with, I don't need a grief counsellor.
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with this.
Yeah.
Generally,
yes.
That's what I have.
Yes, yes. Now that's not contradicting. So the man, halavai, we were just talking about this at dinner tonight. I haven't gone to a doctor in a while and I need to really go and just get myself checked up. Halavai, I wish men had the awareness that I'm ascribing to them in tonight's class. Men are hopeless. In the way that you've generalized, men are hopeless. There's nothing wrong. I'm not sad. That's fine. Don't even have that. I've been chopping up the Sefirot top and bottom, intellect, emotion. Let's now chop it up right and left. Women have what's called Bina Yasera. Women have something that men don't have, which is an additional component of Bina, which is in the intellectual side. It's an awareness. Bina is awareness, to be able to judge, to be able to analyze. Chachma is to be able to develop new thinking. Very, very different, awareness and new thinking. Women have a natural Bina Yasera, which means they have the natural additional component of awareness and self-judgment or judgment of others, but it will usually be inward, self-judgment and self-criticism. And as a result, you will find that as a result of that additional component, that even when they are pursuing, they will be faster to pursue where they are lacking than a man is. You are correct on that. And men should listen to that it's a higher intuition of women.
So I can ask one more at least.
Yeah.
We all have the male, the male and the female.
Yeah.
Is the ultimate that we're trying to create, so we've got a perfect 50-50 balance of male and female, or is that going to be a situation that's going to create chaos in one's mentality?
Yeah. So 50-50 is almost never the goal. It's always 60-40, 70-30, and sometimes it's 70 this and sometimes it's 70 that. Tiferes, which means harmony, is based on what is appropriate, not according to self, but according to the other. So I'll give you a good example, nothing to do with emotion. You see a poor person in the street. Chesed says, I want to help that poor person. I want to give them $1 million. Poor thing. Gvura is like, I don't want to give them anything. Why? Because they're going to use it on drugs. It's going to become an ice epidemic if I give them $1 million. I don't want to give them anything. Tiferes says, let's take the give and let's take the resistance and merge it together. I want to give sandwiches. Why? Because the sandwiches can't be turned into a drug. I'm happy to give if it's a sandwich. So how much are you giving? You're giving $2.30. A sandwich. It's nothing. What was more dominant there? You tamed your chesed with your gvura. You injected chesed into your gvura. So was there more of one than the other? I don't know. But it's definitely not 50-50. because I wanted to give $1 million, I'm now giving $2.30. I didn't want to give anything. So I'm still giving a lot of chesed, but I've tamed it. A judge in court, there's a criminal, a professional bank robber, and he breaks down crying in court. Says, I didn't realize I was causing so much pain to everyone. I apologize, I'm crying. The judge is going, oh, I'm so empathetic. Wow, what a genuine person. I've got such chesed, I'm going to let this person off the hook. Gvura's like, kill the bastard. Just ripped everyone off, blah, 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 blah. So Gvura's like, you know what, I'm not going to kill him, but I'm putting him away for life. For his own good, he might learn over the course of 25 years in prison, life in Australia, over the 25 years in prison, he might learn, but I'm not letting him out. There's a lot of Gvura there, but there's still some chesed. So we're never going for 50-50. But what is the commonality in both those cases? It wasn't about the judge going, I actually think that's unfair. And it wasn't about the person walking past the poor person going, oh, I think I want to do this. It was about looking at the other and saying, what do they need right now? The prisoner needs 25 years in prison and a rehabilitation course. The beggar on the street needs a sandwich, not money. So it's always in context of the situation. It's always in context of the other. We should never judge ourselves against ourselves. We should judge ourselves against ourselves in the situation in which we're in. Otherwise, we're just talking optimal stuff, which is textbook nonsense. We have to always judge ourselves. That's why it says in Pirkei Avos, never judge another person until you've walked in their shoes. Why? Because it's not about judging the person. You've got to be in the situation to know whether it was right or wrong. And you will generally find then that it's a lot harder to judge a person. It's good? All right. So the perfect balance, perfection is not getting the perfect balance. Perfection is getting the right balance every single time. Getting it right every single time. So Hashem is perfect balance because Hashem is every single time. Hashem is time. Existence, the placing of this planet in the soul. I like to meditate every day on the fact that Earth is where it is in the solar system. It's incredible. A bit more this way, a bit more that way, would be done for. If we weren't rotating on the axis the way it is, it would be done for. Everything's amazing. It's incredible because Hashem is balance. If you actually look at the world, you will notice balance. You will only find one species with imbalance. That's mankind. We're the only thing. All of nature balances itself. All of nature's in sync. The waters will rise, the waters will fall, the Amazon will flood, the Amazon will drain. It all works out. The only thing that's not getting it right is humans. But because we're living in God's world, even we'll get it right. Just it's going to hurt us getting there. Which is why the tikkun is with us or without us. Either we're going to get it right because we realize it, or nature's going to correct us. Nature's going to correct us. One day we're going to wake up and we're going to discover that, I haven't got enough water to drink. There's no water coming out of my tap. And we'll be like, damn, I've got to solve this. One day we're going to wake up and we're going to be like, I'm a bit hungry today. Yeah, and things aren't going. We're going to learn hook or by crook. That's why I'm not worried about us destroying the planet. I'm more worried about the planet destroying us. And it'll only do that if we are not masakin, if we don't correct ourselves to get into sync. Why did Hashem put us into this world? Why did Hashem give us the gift to rise above nature? So that we could master nature, not control nature. And that's the ultimate tikkun. What does master nature be? Nature can't do one thing. It can correct itself, it adjusts itself, it balances itself. It only doesn't do one thing. It doesn't think. It doesn't allow for spirituality. What is the one thing humanity can do? Ascribe meaning. Our job is to ascribe meaning to nature, not to control it, to revere it but not worship it. To realize that there is a Hashem that created this. And to worship Hashem's presence in the world, that will lead to absolute tikkun of where humanity and the rest of nature will be in complete balance. And then we will be good to the environment, not because we're meant to be good to the environment, not because it's good for us, because we will realize that we are part of the environment.
I was just going to say, so then the time of Mashiach, when the Mashiach era comes, that's when all human beings understand that concept of observing?
I wish it would be that easy. When Mashiach comes, humanity will be on a trajectory of getting there. It'll be an irreversible trajectory. So we're not there yet. When Mashiach comes, we'll have a whole lot of people saying, yep, this is the way to go, and the rest of humanity will be pulled by the teeth, and they'll come along with it.
The balance of masculine and feminine, it would be the analytical, or would it be the awareness?
Analytical and awareness is both sides. It'll be the awareness as well as the aspiration to aspire for the ultimate, instead of the aspiration for control, or the awareness and therefore the subsequent apathy. We're going to use each other to actually better the world. I'm excited. Shkoyach. Thank you, everyone.